First Sergeant Kep here with Company D, 2nd United States Sharpshooters.
Captain Ethan Whitehall, Company D, 2nd United States Sharpshooters.
And today we are going to talk about, in our Reenacting 101 series, choosing a unit for you.
So to start, there's multiple units to join within Civil War reenacting. You have your family-oriented, you have your hardcore campaigners, they love to be miserable during the weekend. There's also kind of your intermediates, just like us in Company D. We have a mixture of progressives like First Sergeant Kep and I, and we have our newcomers to the hobby that really can't spend the money on that top quality gear yet, but still want to run and gun, have a good time, and eventually work up to that progressive level of reenacting. First Sergeant Kep and I definitely were the first ones to kind of start that movement in the company and realize that the quality gear, yeah, it's more expensive, but it's definitely worth it in the long run, holds up better, and just looks good.
Yeah, and Captain Whitehall brings up sort of one of the big things to be looking for when kind of shopping around for a unit. Obviously, you might have a specific impression already in mind or something that you're curious about because of family history, but each different unit is going to have a different reenacting culture. They're going to have a different group of people, different backgrounds, different interests. You're going to have some units that are going to be really focused on historical accuracy. You're going to have some that are going to be more focused on civilian support. You're going to have others that are sort of just mainstream to a fault.
Yeah.
And they're fine. There's nothing wrong with them, but, we need more bodies on the field. But the mainstreamers are the ones that get their entire kit from Sutler Row, and that's kind of the extent of their historical attention to detail. They might read some books on their particular unit, know a few general bits of information about Civil War life and soldier life. And then you're going to have, how to say it, you're going to have those party units.
The frat house units.
Yes. That, once the day's over, they're hitting the barley pop and the oh be joyful pretty hard.
And then come morning drill, the next morning they're walking on their lips. And that's always great to see. It's always a good one.
Yeah, and then, you may also just really want to burn powder. And there are units out there that love to try to fire their single-shot muskets like it's a 1861 LMG.
Yeah, of course in the sharpshooters, shooting 10 rounds a minute, we already do that, but there are some units with the muzzleloaders, as First Sergeant was saying, that pride themselves on 4 or 5, sometimes 6 rounds a minute, even though it's, they don't use rammers and it's not the most accurate, but they try.
Yeah, and, typically those units aren't very hot on drill. They're just out there to, make some noise and have a good time and go back to camp and hoot it up.
Yeah.
Then you also have some units that are pretty much strictly living history.
Yeah.
That don't always do battle events or battle weekends, but they work closely with historical organizations and forts and national parks, for example.
There's quite a few here in Washington State. Some go to Fort Sealicum and some do stuff at Fort Vancouver.
Mm-hmm. And then the other thing, too, would be just sort of like the demographics of some of the groups. So some units are going to be a lot older than others. Not poke some gentle fun, but usually it's artillery.
Usually.
You're going to have, and then you're also sometimes going to have really young groups.
Like us.
Like us. Yeah, we tend to skew 20s, I think, would probably be early 20s would be the average age.
Yeah, our average age is between 20 and 22.
Mm-hmm.
So.
And then you're going, and then as the captain brought up, you're going to have units that are going to be more family-oriented. You're going to have different groups that might all come from a similar profession.
Yep.
You may have some, we have quite a few very sort of religious groups.
Yes.
And that's sort of part of their impression. You get a lot of the Christian Commission.
Yep.
A lot of the like the Sunday service sort of crowd that really try to do like the 19th century religious services, right?
There's also a unit that comes and plays with us from Idaho, and they're actually probably the more proper age demographic for the entire Civil War, even more than us and the sharpshooters. Everyone's in the teens because they're at-risk youth, so they kind of take them in, kind of give them structure in their life, and they get to play soldier for a weekend. And it's actually helped them out quite a bit from talking with them. It's like, yeah, I used to break into cars, I used to steal cars, stuff like that, and doing this has actually really helped me out. It's like, whatever helps you out, especially with this, keeps the hobby going. So, and a lot of them are really good people too. So,
well, and reenacting is one of those hobbies that if you're reenacting, you don't have money to spend on drugs.
Biggest joke in reenacting is get your kids into reenacting. They won't have enough money to spend on drugs, and yeah, especially when you get really into it, it's kind of takes all your time and money away.
Yeah, in a good way. There's also things to look for, like sort of like the energy of the group. Some are going to be, we talked about the frat boy reenactors, and that's kind of all ages. Don't just think it's just the young people that drink hard sometimes. But you're going to kind of have like your high energy, sort of having fun, goofballs. Maybe the ones like in their downtime, they're out playing town ball.
Yep.
They're busy doing fatigue details, all sorts of stuff to keep busy.
Wrestling.
Yeah.
We've had that happen at events, so that's always fun to watch.
Yeah, and then you have others that are pretty, low energy. They get back to camp, they're polishing things, they're
cleaning
rifles, reading books, taking naps,
visiting friends in other camps, that kind of stuff.
Yeah. So it's one thing to have an idea of what unit you want to be in, but each unit is kind of like a family, and some will probably fit better with you than others. So before you just like, oh well, I had an ancestor in this unit, or I read a book, or I saw a movie, I'm just really fascinated with this group. First check, kind of do your due diligence to see if you'll even get along with them, or if they'll get along with you. There may be any number of reasons things could kind of go both ways. They could have a less than welcoming atmosphere. There could be, teasing, or maybe you feel like you're not getting the attention that you need.
Yep.
Or there might be others that are the complete opposite.
Yeah.
You get some of those high energies. Hey, we need you up here. We got you scheduled for this. You need to have your gear by then. And also, too, with our unit, a sense of humor is a big one.
Yeah.
We work really hard, but we play really hard.
Yeah.
So being able to laugh and get along is really important, and we're really conscious of not recruiting just anyone. We have to make sure that they're going to be a good fit when we welcome into our family, because you're kind of a Berdan for life.
Yeah, and that's kind of the interesting thing with reenacting is you'll notice certain units actually are all similar in some way. I mean, especially with us in the sharpshooters, it might be us being, kind of the younger crowd, even though we have had older members. Some are former war vets, like Ron, who was our Canadian in the unit, and great guy. Always had a serious kind of face about him. Kind of one of the guys you don't want to walk into in a dark alleyway at night, but as soon as he gets around us in camp, everyone's just laughing, joking, So it might just be, like I said, the age in the unit or something like that, but every unit kind of has their own personality traits that everyone has of some sort. And, don't let our videos fool you. The past ones, of us kind of being serious, I'm sure our sarcastic humors come across in some of them. But, we definitely like to have fun, and I think that's kind of what draws more the younger crowd to us is, these guys know how to joke around, have a good time, practical jokes, that kind of stuff. So it's always one of those things as First Sergeant was saying, kind of shop around, for lack of a better term, for the right unit that fits you.
Yeah, and the other thing to think about, too, is depending on how involved you're going to be in the hobby, you're going to be spending a lot of time with these people.
Yeah.
You go on bivouacs, you're sleeping, side by side, sharing blankets, rolling up next. Yeah, you could be spooning with these people, and if you don't get along with them, it's going to make for you're not going to want to stick with the hobby for very long.
Yeah,
and that's why taking your time and finding the right group, and sometimes just finding the right group will completely change your take on reenacting. You may actually end up finding a unit or an impression that you never would have considered in the past, but you realize, wow, here's a group of people. I really fit in well. They meet my needs, and I can provide a need for them. And this is something I want to commit to. But if you are, like, say for example, if you're really passionate about historical accuracy and getting the right gear and the best gear the first time, you don't want to end up in a mainstream group because they're not going to be able to help you with the latest and greatest makers and vendors and sutlers that are cranking out the most, hardcore AF gear out there.
Yeah, it's a daunting task because there's a lot out there, but what's right specifically for your unit can be really hard to find, especially in a group of people that really don't know where to go because they think, that $80 sack coat down at Sutler Row's good enough when...
Oh, I know a guy in Pakistan, get a good deal.
Yeah, that's
it's always, like, no!
Yeah, that's always a thing.
But mainstream units can be a great option, like especially if this is like a sometimes hobby, so maybe it's only going to be a weekend or two a year.
Yeah.
Maybe it just might be you, and you just kind of want to share the experience with, I guess, a low level of commitment.
Yeah.
Because you can get a mainstream kit for $300.
Yeah, at the most.
And get going. Whereas if you're going to be more committed, then you're going to want to make sure you have a right fit. And it's also not uncommon for people to change units.
Yeah.
Or have multiple impressions.
Fairly common. There's some people that just, they unit hop. They just move from one unit to the next, to the next, to the next, until they find what they like. That can kind of get expensive, just depending, the needs of the unit. You can't go from a standard line blue unit to a Zouave to a Berdan sharpshooter to...
Butternut.
Yeah, to, a Confederate. That's 3 or 4 different uniform styles that you're kind of changing throughout maybe a year, 2 years, every 2 years until you find the right one. So that's why it's always important to kind of get that right feel for the right unit for obvious reasons, for, money.
Yeah, and some units are going to be more physical than others. For example, we have people from all different physical abilities, and we're fortunate enough they know their limits, they know their boundaries and what they can do. They perform great with those, but we run hard. And most people, you may not have the physical ability to keep up with a unit like ours. And that's why you can go to like an older group. So if you're, longer in the tooth, then you can find a lower key group that, could still have really tight impressions.
Yeah.
There are some plenty of senior veteran reenactors who have really good impressions. But they stick to the sort of the block formations and basic drills that can accommodate their age. They're also really good with living history demonstrations.
Yep.
They do it sometimes with like little museum spreads. If you do have special health needs too, there are a lot of EMTs and first responders in this hobby. Yeah. So you might be able to stumble upon, it's like, hey, you know what, I really want to do this, but I have X health concern. This may not come up ever, but, having the peace of mind of knowing that there's a medical professional immediately in camp who could take care of you or get things coordinated should you ever need it is a big help.
Yeah, reenacting definitely takes in all walks of life. So, you'll have EMTs, police officers, firemen, military.
Well, yeah, there's whole units like, if you're, if you've served or you're active duty, there's reenacting units that are just active duty.
Yeah, and those are probably some of the most tight-knit because, they've gone through the real struggles of being in the military, possibly even being in combat, so they know and they really pull together as a real tight-knit unit. They're usually some of the more with-it-together impressions. Mm-hmm. And they're amazing to watch because they know how things should be, and like you'll kind of see one unit kind of fumbling through something, you see them all like, kind of stuff like, and we kind of laugh and like, they know what they're talking about. We're not going to say anything, so it's always interesting. But like First Sergeant was saying, with all some units with medical needs. I mean, we kind of joke that we're the broken brigade and the sharpshooters. I mean, you know, we're always out running the hardest and all that, but we got an asthmatic, joint issues, knee issues,
Heart issues.
Well, we got two of that in
Yeah.
in our unit. We had Ron, our Canadian. He served in two different militaries and two different nationalities, with Canada and with the United States and Vietnam. So
that took a toll on his body.
yeah, his ankles, his knees, his wrists, I believe his heart was also kind of bummed out. So, I mean, but if you can hang with it and, you know, find the right unit, I mean, the sky's the limit really with anyone. So
yeah, and it also it sometimes helps too if you have a general sense of the impression you're going for.
yeah,
You know, channels like Townsend's have really brought back historical cooking, and maybe you're interested in being a company cook.
Yep.
There may be units that would need one or are actively seeking that sort of impression, and there's others. You know, there's some units that have pretty substantial kitchens already, so they may not be looking for another cook.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you know, with our unit, you know, my very first event, I was walking around all afternoon, and you know, this goofball was the only one who talked to me the entire time I was there, and it's like, well, you guys seem like a cool group of guys. I'll come back again, and then we start talking about gear.
Yeah.
See what else? There's accommodations, I think, is another big one.
That's
So
always the important one.
yeah, so if there may be a reason, you know, you may have like special sleeping needs. You know, usually you can hide all manner of sins in an A tent.
Yep, we do have an air mattress user in our company, but
I
know. But you know, we don't.
You never see it.
We're not too hard on them, and exactly, you never see it. You know, there's people with bad backs. There's some people where, you know, as soon as they lay down on hard ground, they're, you know, that turtle, they can't roll over anything. It ruins their weekend, you know. Reenacting's supposed to be fun. It's supposed to be a hobby that you can enjoy. Yeah, it's going to have its moments where, you know, yeah, this really sucks. It's hot. We're wearing wool. You might think, why the hell am I doing this? It's 90 degrees out with 100% humidity. I feel like I'm drinking the air. But, you know, it's one of those things where an injury or, you know, where you don't feel 100% because, you know, the unit you're in, their standards are so high that comfort to, or your well-being kind of takes a hit. You know, it's going to affect your outlook on the hobby.
Yeah, and also too, depending on, you know, where you're living and what sort of organizations are running your Civil War reenactment hobby, sometimes, like in Washington, in the Northwest, there's always modern camp.
Yeah.
So there is off-site places where you can have RVs and modern tents and, you know, charcoal or propane grills.
Sleeping in your car.
Some people sleep in their car. And there might be other organizations that could be in your area that don't provide any accommodation for modern camp. Sometimes it's either 1860 or it's nothing.
Yeah. Yeah, you have to eat, live, breathe, suffer in 1860. So
yeah, and know that, you know, up front too. Like, there are groups out there that will be as period correct as possible, and so it's the whole spectrum as far as impression, organization culture, historical accuracy, family accessibility, political and religious backgrounds. You name it. There's going to be a unit out there for you. But just don't just find the first one that you thought was neat and dive in and expect to have perfect results.
Yeah.
You could get lucky and it could be the perfect fit for your reenacting future.
I mean, that happened with both of us.
We got lucky the first time.
Yep.
But some people have had some pretty tough experiences getting into the wrong unit.
Yeah, I mean, we've taken in some members from different units that have, you know, they got burned pretty bad by their first unit, and they were almost out of the hobby. You know, they knew us as friends, you know, just kind of idle chat, you know, going through Sutler Row or knowing someone in the same company that they're in, and, you know, oh yeah, this is so-and-so, you know, they're new. Just striking up idle conversation with them, and they want to get out of the hobby, but they're like, oh, you know, First Sergeant Kep or Captain Whitehall, they were really nice to me last year. Maybe I should try them out. And they end up loving us. And they're like, yeah, like, because of you guys, I almost quit reenacting, but, you guys kind of saved me. It's like, cool.
Yeah, or there could be, in our unit too, we get a lot of, people, like maybe their unit, that event doesn't make numbers, and
Yep.
so we'll fall in with these Berdans, and they are just completely enamored with our different tactics, our extensive drill, the way we work the battlefield, and
kind of our overall esprit de corps in our unit too. I mean,
yeah, and they enjoyed and maybe grew up in other units, or they've been part of it, they've been a private, they've been the leader of it, and just by trying a different unit, it's like, wow, this kind of appeals to me.
Or my favorite reason for joining us, which one of our privates in the company, they just hated polishing brass. So they fell in with us because their unit didn't really show up with enough numbers, so they fell in with us, and they're like, he sits down next to the fire, gets his belt buckle out and some brass polish, and what are you doing? Why are you polishing brass? We don't do this in this unit. You don't? Oh, I'm joining you guys right away. And we're like, dedication to polishing your brass, even if your unit's not there, but that was his selling point. Oh, you don't have to polish brass? I'm on board. So
yeah, there's only so much brasso fumes a person can take, I think.
I swear some people love it. Some people love the smell of gunpowder, some love the smell of brasso. So, just depends on you.
Yeah, so let us know if there's other things that you think are important to look for when shopping for a unit, choosing... even sometimes with an era too, just finding the right reenacting group for you. Let us share some of your experiences. If a unit reached out to you in a really meaningful way, what did that unit do to really impact and grab and recruit you into that impression?
Yeah.
And thanks for watching this part of this series. We're going to be doing more videos on Reenacting 101. Thanks so much for liking, commenting, and subscribing, and we'll see you next time.